All right, and welcome back to another clip here. So in this one, we're going to see, another example of how it's not always going to be clean, it's not always going to be perfect, and we're going to see some examples of some really poor decision making and some really poor skill errors. But ultimately, in the end, it's going to result in a scoring shot, and we're going to see how we get there. So AFLW here, Adelaide Crows in the blue, yellow, and red, heading towards the left of screen. North Melbourne Kangaroos in the white and blue heading towards the right of screen. So let's see, we got a kick in here kind of in the Adelaide defensive half, and let's watch how this plays out. So kick in to play, nice little kick just to maintain possession, good lead from the player coming back here. But what she does, we talk about maintaining possession, she just kind of plays on for no reason, steps off her mark, and ends up doing a little nothing kick. So she steps off, not really sure what she's going to do with it, ends up just kind of kicking into this kind of space here for no real reason, and it gets cut off by the North Melbourne player. So she goes back. You can see her eyes, good vision here of how her eyes are scanning the ground looking for an option. And she ends up kicking back to her forward. Really good by the Adelaide Crows defender here. She's going to just very subtly shove her direct opponent directly under the ball. Not a big shove where she's going to get it in the back, but just enough to kind of get that space and take the intercept. Thinks about playing on, thinks better of it. And that little chip kick to the wing. Okay, so good kick to maintain possession. You are sort of hemmed in by the wing here, but you've regained possession and you're pretty happy with that result. Okay, so she goes back, wants to move it quickly, kind of scrubs the skill. So not a good kick, and it results again in the ball on the ground and a contest, and this is going to end up going for a ball up. So a little bit sloppy here, ends up getting tied up, and it's a ball up on the boundary at halfway. So pretty neutral part of the ground at this point. We've seen a couple of examples of poor skills kind of get us to here. Ball up. Kind of again, bit of a hit and hope by the North Melbourne player here, and it's going to be collected by the Adelaide player coming through. She does well to collect it and goes backwards to her player. We talk about anchors. We're going to talk about anchors a lot. Little backwards handball, get possession, look up the ground. Okay, so really nice example there. Steps around her direct opponent. Big kick, long kick. Okay, it doesn't get marked, well defended. But this forward player here who didn't take the mark, still pursues the ball. Okay, so she gets beaten in the air, but she's after it on the ground. Second efforts, ends up earning the ball up. And you can see the Adelaide players here are good pressure. They're outnumbering the North Melbourne players. And we've won another ball up. This time, from an Adelaide point of view, gone from that kind of neutral position on the center boundary, on the boundary kind of halfway up the field, and now they're at the edge of their 50, and they've gained a ton of territory here. So ball up, really good tap. Look at that tap. Sees her player directly in front of her. She's come through, stepped away from her defender, and she's now able to kind of receive the ball, turn on her right foot, and look into the forward 50, and she's going to make no mistake. That's a snap kick. Okay, so we talk about snap kicks that are round the body, end over end kick. It's not always going to be a nice drop punt. That's an example where it's not just forwards who use those kicks to kick goals. It's also really nice when you're facing kind of sideways like that and you want to get the ball into the 50. Great mark, really strong mark here. Brings it down in front of her defender, takes a really good mark, and she's going to go back and kick the goal. Okay, so let's watch here. Let's just watch her routine. We talk about routines, right? Okay. Good mark. That's a really strong mark in front of your defender. Brings it down, 20 out in front of goal. Goes back, takes her time, gives herself enough room to run into the ball, doesn't have to worry about her defender standing on the mark. This is a routine. She's going to do this every time she's in front of goal. Sets herself, jogs in, little stutter step, all good, whatever that routine looks like to you, and she kicks the goal. Okay, so it was sloppy, it wasn't pretty, but when we got into a position where the ball is able to be won, tied up here, Oops, well, let's go back one more. Good handball. That's a really nice handball. Steps around her direct opponent. Again, she could have given up here. She's lost the marking contest. She could just let that ball slip out the back and go to North Melbourne. Instead, she stays. Second effort. Pursuit by the Adelaide players. Earns the ball up. And then watch this ruck tap. Just hits that ball and then immediately explodes with pace and kicks it into the dangerous part of the ground in front of the goals. Okay, so really good in that kind of second half, but we see how those skill errors, how that poor decision making at the beginning ends up in some really sloppy footy, turnovers back and forth. But when Adelaide ends up working well and moving the ball forward, they end up getting rewarded.